Tonight on the Irish Rally podcast, we take a very family-themed approach to our look back at the Wilton Recycling Donegal International Rally. 3 siblings competing in the same event at the same time isn't unprecedented, but it is somewhat rare with the Harris, Kearney, Driver and Kelly families among those achieving this feat over the years. This year it was the turn of the Eves family, with Dylan taking home his class, while Kevin and Corey fell away on the final loop after very entertaining drives indeed. We find out what these 3 bios got up to at the weekend and how they got involved in rallying, and indeed just simply how they keep the whole thing going. We'll also be joined by another set of brothers in Richard and David Moffett, with arguably one of the best rally stories you'll hear from any rally over the years coming up very, very shortly indeed. We'll also get insight into why Dave went back into the Starlet from the Mark II. We talk about the enterprising element of the family, and at the end of the show, we'll have a full rundown of all the class winners. Ladies and gents, welcome along to the Irish Rally podcast. Now, on the Irish Rally podcast, we have somewhat of a rarity. So, siblings in rallying, in the same rallies, probably not that unusual, but 3 into 1, somewhat of a rarity. Has been done before, but it happened again at the weekend in Donegal, of course, with the International Rally, where these buckos on the other screen here, the Eves brothers, Kevin, Corey, and Dylan, all involved in the Donegal International Rally to varying degrees of success, I might add. It was all looking very, very good indeed for the 3 boys to bring her home until the last loop, when unfortunately disaster struck for Kevin on stage 18, Corey on the last stage, and Dylan, you come in with a fantastic result. So we'll start with you. I wouldn't have envisaged beforehand that maybe you'd be coming inside the top 40, and to take the class must have been pretty sweet as well, yeah?
Definitely now. We had a wee mishap with the bail on Friday, so we just clipped the wing in the door, but once you took off heading for the bail now, I didn't think we'd be sitting as first on the finish line.
Yeah, and 34th or 5th overall, I think, yeah?
35th overall.
Yeah, so seeded over, what were you, 110 or so-ish?
109.
Yeah, I mean, that's serious going when you consider the bail that you mentioned there as well, and the RC4 class is very, very competitive, isn't it?
It is very competitive now. When we went in at the start of the year in Galway now, fairly open by eyes, the pace that class is on now.
Yeah. Because obviously you've been building a bit of momentum. You were nominated initially for the Billy Coleman Award last year. You were going well on the loose stuff, and you're gaining a bit of momentum now, and you're learning a good bit, no doubt.
Definitely. The Civic wasn't that great, but most rallies with a lot of bother, so we have better luck this year, and them yokes far nicer to drive than the Civic, so enjoying it a lot more, and the pace is coming easier.
Yeah. Corey, we haven't spoken to you before here on the Irish Rally podcast. You've seen a good bit of Kev, all right, but things were looking pretty good for you as well. So what actually happened in the end?
Yeah, we went on the Friday, and for the first 3 on the Saturday, we had brake issues. We kept losing our pedal every time we got warm, but we kind of got through, and then after that we ended up, after kind of 2 calipers and messed about, because with the car only getting rebuilt, we got to the bottom of it, and then we started to set reasonably good times, so we were happy out, but we were kind of in no man's land. So we were sitting 4th, and they ended up then into the last day, and then whenever everything kind of started to piss rain and stuff in the evening time, we lost 20 in Glen, because we just kind of backed off because we weren't going to do nothing. But the backing off didn't really work out then in the Atlantic Drive, so we just came over like a 3 right over the crest and just ran a wee bit wide and clipped the wall and slid down the road. Or just like a wee stone verge, you know?
Yeah. Unforgiven territory up there, like.
Yeah, okay, even because I kind of can't wait to look back over the car now to see actually what went wrong, because even at the time it kind of happened that fast. It was only a slow, it wasn't that it was a big off, but it was all slow speed, you know, but it still kind of doesn't really, we just didn't really cop what had happened or why it happened, you know?
Yeah. Well, Corey, even like you see a few clips there from Glen Village in particular, it literally seemed like ice. Like, you know, when you have a fine weather like that and then you get the pisses of rain, I mean, it's lethal stuff altogether. So what did you actually do in terms of tyres, because while the downpours were heavy, it was still quite changeable, and even like we'll say parts of Saturday, things tended to dry out, quickly enough. Like, so obviously a lot. Yeah.
We were mediums all round on Sunday morning, but because we were happy enough, because even they were nearly going off on us through Glen and Atlantic Drive when it was dry. But then whenever we went into Fannet on the first pass, we got like the conditions changed like 5 times nearly. It started wet and then dried, like down the big straights past the football pitch. Our wipers couldn't keep the window clear, and then just once we went over the hill, it was bone dry. But it worked good. Hey, we had a good run over Fannet and all, and everything worked perfect. So we ended up just going back out on the same tyres again. We just cut them out in case the rain came. But sure, we actually got out the road section to Glen, and everything was bone dry, looking good. And the next thing then, it just opened then whenever we were queuing into Glen. So that was, it was grand. Hey, we didn't actually have any moments in Glen or even in Atlantic up until that one. Like we weren't trying, we weren't pushing, we weren't trying to do nothing mad, because all we had to do was get to the finish. So, but we still ended up making a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, and it can happen, like, as simple as that. And sometimes what you prepare for, like, and you have in your mind is not the one that just stumble upon. It's another little bugger that'll come and bite you in the arse, like,
Yeah. It was mad, like the conditions, because whenever we came out of Glen, the finish line was bone dry, and the road section the whole way to Atlantic Drive was bone dry. And then once we queued up the hill into Atlantic, it just opened then again, you know what I mean? And then after we went off, I would say we were waiting on the trailer for maybe an hour and a half. It was thunderstorms and thunder and lightning and everything, Yeah. But okay, it wasn't even the weather that caught me out. Like it was the wet road, but it wasn't that we were on a push and we got caught out. We just made a mistake on a right-hander, ran wide. So
yeah, disappointing to you're on a good run, obviously, and it's shite not to get it home. And Kevin, obviously, similar sentiments for yourself. What did actually go wrong in the end?
She went off a cylinder, hey, so we'll tell you the truth, we didn't really get to the bottom of it. If it could be something minor, it could be something serious, but we kind of literally got to the top of the mountain in Glen and she went off a cylinder. And hey, if it was the last stage, we probably would have chanced on, but we had a couple of K to climb and we were going to get out to the end. And even when we did stop, we tried to go through fuel and stuff like that there and see, but couldn't really get to the bottom of it. It was the first one out of service, so we were screwed, as the man says.
Yeah, I know, man. And like after getting that far, I mean, the mad thing about the class 14 side of things the weekend, like, Kevin's pace is just ridiculous. And I don't know, the G boys mentioned this before, Kevin, yourself and Gary, and that nearly being a case of who was going to be, the best of the rest, so to speak. That I'm not saying there's an acceptance that Kevin Gallagher is going to be ridiculous, but it is kind of a subconscious thought, knowing that he's going to be, very, very difficult to beat. Like, and what way did that pan out in your mind in the lead up to the event and maybe during it as well?
Okay, I think we've raced enough with like even Kevin and James, even Stafford and the likes of the Darians. Say is the reality is like. I suppose we knew when we were on Friday, the nature of the stages on Friday was probably going to suit us. But Kevin's he's kind of a cool customer at the same time. We made a boo on Friday and probably should have come out of Friday maybe leading, but it would have been only a token. Do you know what I mean? Like start Saturday morning, I think Kevin made it up 13. The first 3 stages on Saturday morning, I think Kevin could have had 40 seconds out of me and Damien. Like. You know what I mean? Once you get down into that territory, the knowledge he has, he's a good driver, then you put him in one of them yokes. Sure, I think he made it up. Well, he could have took 25 seconds off us up over Knockalla. Like, so we're nearly, the rest of us are there when you're down there. You're just picking up the pieces. You're kind of lurking, because me and Damien was that even with tyres. We were kind of nearly both picking the same. And it was very tight towards the end with me and Damien. There was only 16 in it, but really and truly that was probably more so 10, because we would have got a flyer on Gary Gort. We lost Gary Gort and Damien got it, and we would have got one of the R5 cars times, so we got a 6 second quicker than Damien. So I just think you're probably just not going to chase the likes of Kevin. If he stays going, you're not going to chase him down there now.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous the groove that he's able to get into, and it's amazing, really. And it wasn't for the want to try and that you weren't pushing, because certainly on Knockalla, I mean, I've a massive amount of admiration. Look, we've touched on it before. I would never actually ask you this specific question. When you come into Will Harris Corner, is there any thinking whatsoever of the previous thing that happened there, no?
Just get around it. Hey, you breathe maybe when you get past it. But I had about 2 years in the first year I tried it. So, hey, you know, that's not the corner scares me. You know, the corner that I actually get to, and I hate really till I get round it, is when you get to the top of Knockalla and you start going down the backside. There's like 3 right-handers that tightens at the barrier, and it's just a cliff. Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
Till I get to there, hey, I'll be just... I was laughing with the likes of Mitchell and some of them guys here, nearly driving around with one eye closed, trying not to see the water, you know, that kind of way. But the first time round, I'd say I drove around them in about second gear. Hey, it was nearly embarrassing, but it's good crack. It is a class stage, so it's one of the big ones there.
Yeah, no, and you know what, lads? Dylan, I'll bring you back in on this here. I didn't realise how tricky the actual inland section of Knockalla is and was until whenever we drove off it afterwards to get to the end of it. And Jesus, it's a roller coaster both inland and by the sea, Dylan, isn't it?
It is, definitely. There's a lot of wee tricky bits in it. We nearly got caught out. No, I can't even remember the name of that bridge, the jump on the bridge there. The 3 left up on the top of the hill, we nearly got caught out in it. It can be slippy enough there. The conditions in Knockalla was the same as Corey was saying on the Sunday, like it was wet and dry, and it was just tricky enough in places.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Corey? What way do you find that in particular, or is there other stages that you absolutely dread in Donegal?
No, that was my first time ever to do Knockalla, like, and it is a savage stage, you know. But like Kevin says, because even I was asking him at the start about it, like, and down the backside, it doesn't really matter what notes you have. You know, whenever you're looking at them right-handers coming down around, like, it's hard to just listen. You know what I mean? Hey, because it's funny because it's like 3 right-handers, but they're nearly feel like all the one just the whole way around till you get out of them, you know.
Yeah.
But definitely class. Once it's a class stage, even when you go in and like, it's fast, like.
Mm-hmm. And the difference in approach as well in that particular section, like obviously I was looking at it pretty clearly. I don't know to this moment what actually happened, Gary Kiernan, but I can tell you there was at least 2 moments in the first 3 or 4 locations of Knockalla that I saw on my eye line where he did not have much regard for cold tires, so to put it to you that way.
I think he did clip. He clipped something on a fast section there. I think what he did, he cut the grass in a kind of hairy enough place, and I think he bent the bottom arm or something. Or he put the wheel back there a bit, and he limped up the road a kilometre and pulled in. I think is what basically happened to him.
Yeah. And Kev, just one last thing on Knockalla, and I started talking about it. You know, it's just all these things in the island when you see them up close is really cool. But you'll obviously see the clip that I've put up there where, you know, you're a little bit tail happy on the approach to that lay-by. Paul Barrett actually spun there, and on the first run was obviously down 100 metres, and that generally be the rule of thumb. You get a marshal down 100 metres before the stage even goes live, that you don't have too much of a trek. And that is a deceptive little bend. And even if there's a barrier there, I could only imagine that is a brown hogs moment, like whenever that happens, especially there, you know.
Oh yeah. No, it'd just be anything up along that White Line Road. Hey, if you take any wee wobble, you just your heart skips a wee bit, so it does. But no, it's just it's kind of one of those ones you nearly have to take a bit of knowledge on it. You know, there's actually not that many corners on the White Line stuff. You know, I'd say everybody does a wee bit of homework and kind of tries to nearly learn their way across it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask, lads, where is the rallying interest based from in your family, and what sort of headaches is there trying to get 3 years out?
I don't know actually, because I don't know. I would have started rallying. Nobody in our house, father, uncle, anybody, nobody rallied. I suppose I maybe bought a Corolla. We would have had a bit of all track stuff with an Innova and up on the all tracks, the RSA events. And then it kind of all faded away to maybe I was 20 or 21 and I bought just a Clubman Corolla for €5,000 or €6,000, I think, and it kind of all rolled from there. You know, I think seems to be the way of it.
Yeah, and once Corey, you followed then next, and then you, Dylan, yeah.
Yeah, hey, I had done the same. We would have went whenever we were like 13 or 14. Hey, I think we went to the all track and the Nova for a while, and then I suppose whenever Kevin went into the 208, then I went into the Corolla that time. Then, hey, so that kind of didn't, I suppose, last I done my usual, and it didn't last too long. I think I done 3 rallies in 14 or something like that, and again, it was a bit too brave and wrecked it. Hey, so that was me gone for 2 or 3 years. Then I had a bridge in Cavan, so that ended that. And I think I was fixed. We rebuilt the car then, and when was that? 17. I think we done Galway International was the first rally then since 14. Hey, and then I went to Australia after that. So we actually really didn't do a wild pile until, I suppose, end 18, 19 was only 19 was really the first year that I actually would have consistently rallied, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dylan, that's when it kind of kicked off for you, yeah.
I would have only been young when they would have started the Nova, but there was a Nova bought for me then when I was 12 or 13, but it was bought as a project, and at that age I had no interest in hooking and screwing, so it was kind of never finished and never pushed to buy anything then, so it went for a long time before I started, and then COVID happened, and I went away to New Zealand and I was going to start when I come back, and then COVID happened, so I didn't get started until after COVID then. So the Harvest 21 would have been my first rally last year, or 21 now would have been my first proper rally.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that GoFundMe page now to fund it off.
Yeah, I think it's mad. It's very, very difficult indeed, and I suppose like the thing that strikes me there is it's not hereditary. Like generally, there's a link somewhere. Like, you know what I mean, that you get the grapher. So there's literally no real family links at all. It's just maybe from going to see something years ago or something like that. Yeah.
I think I always had an interest. I think when we were younger, we kind of half tried to look into kart racing and stuff, and just nothing really. It didn't really pan out. And I think I always had an interest in it. I suppose when I was started, I suppose it just took over. I just kind of started with a clubman thing and tipped away at it. It's nearly like a disease. Then when you kind of do get a couple of good results, you need the gearbox, you need the brakes, and you start building, and you turn around then with a big car and you just get sucked in.
Yeah. And look, we should give we'll give Pego a shout as well, and a few other people maybe inside it, because what's that?
You were staying in the big city for the weekend, were you?
We were, and do you know what? Little do we think there'd be a circus in town, literally. Petty go ball place to the circuit, and Kev, as I said to you, I thought I was the biggest clown staying in the place, and then the circus was down the road, so I didn't feel too bad then. But the mad thing is, I sent you a message. Obviously, Kevin will tell our listeners to say, what's this Avondale farmhouse B&B like? I said, Petty go can't be that big of a place, and lo and behold, there's a fairly strong connection. So maybe tell us what that is as well.
Okay, it'll be one of the, I suppose, Pedigo, I suppose one of the best friends. That'll be his family house or whatever. So Pedigo will be small enough now that there's only 400 or 500 people in the whole town. So it's close enough that way. Yeah,
well, Mary looked after us first. Well, it was unbelievable. She knew we'd an early start. Saturday morning, that we missed the breakfast, but there was 2 lunch packs left out, and by God, were we grateful to him. So thanks a million to Mary and the Avondale farmhouse. Last one passed in by Envirogrind as well. You'd be under a bit of pressure, I'd say, boys, if it wasn't for that place.
I know, definitely. Well, all of us work on it, so I suppose the 3 of us is in it, and we're probably lucky. There's actually a brother between me and Corey who's interested in tractors and lorries, thankfully. So now we're all working in the camp. So now that's like anything. I suppose that's what behind it all. That's what has us rallying. So
yeah, that's it. So a lot to be grateful for. So lads, what's next then? Dylan, are you down the Moonraker this weekend?
No, not gonna bother the Moonraker for it's just too close to.
Yeah.
In a 3-day rally and then convert it over to gravel and stuff. It was never going to happen. So Sligo will be the next one after that.
Mm-hmm. How about you, boys?
I don't know. I'd say might try and go to the LMC or something. Might take away. My car needs a bit of TLC too. I was doing a wee bit of knocking and banging over the weekend. So I'd say I might let sit for 7 or 8 weeks and maybe go to there in August.
Corey?
Yeah, hey, I was going to say I was planning on going to Sligo, but I suppose it'll all depend what Brian Loughlin says now about that.
yeah, the lump hammer will be out, will it?
I don't know. Yeah. We'll take a look here and we'll judge it from after he runs his eye on it to see what way we are.
Yeah. That's all you can do. Well, listen, lads, we'll leave it at that. Thanks a million. It's great to have you on here, and the very best luck to the three going forward. All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, lads. So it's very much a family-themed podcast this week. We've heard from the Eves brothers, and now we're going to hear from the Moffetts here, Richard and David. You're very welcome on the Irish Rally podcast, lads. Good evening.
Thanks for having us.
Good to chat to you. So, Richard, I'm going to start with you because I was very reliably tipped off by your good friend Dave Harrigan of the Harrigan Images that you'll see on Facebook. He told me on the top of Knockgala it was a great story about Richard Moffett. Probably not so great in the sense that your rally effectively ended at the time. But maybe you'll just talk us through it in your own words, and we have some photographic evidence to back up this as well. So go on ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, to be honest, I hadn't really thought about this anymore until you sent me the message today. But our weekend was a bit of a disaster personally. We obviously had an off in Cavan, spent a long few weeks getting the car ready in a hurry for Donegal, and had a few issues with it in putting all back together, and we're basically just ready to go on Thursday morning. I had a quick run in the car and seemed happy enough, literally just up and down the road for 2 minutes. And off we went and did our last day of recce, and then started Friday, and we made a decent start. We were reasonably in the mix with the modifieds on the first stage, and on the second stage I felt the power starting to drain a little bit. You can hear on the in-car. As we went over the finish line, I was sort of giving out, and because I could feel the power through the stage just wasn't what it should be or whatever, and it was the same issue that we've been having during the week with fuel pressure. So we had a look at it at the end of the stage. Wasn't very much we could do, and we went into stage 3 anyway. But as soon as we went off the line, I could feel the car was just spluttering all the way for the first kilometre or so. And then in my distraction or whatever, on the first chicane, I clipped the second wheel. I was half looking at for the second fuel pump and half distracted, and anyway clipped the second wheel and broke a steering arm. So while our weekend was probably going to be over anyway, that ended it fairly promptly. But we pulled in at a farmer's house, and that's why you messaged me. I was sort of lying against the wall with my arms folded, sick at myself and sick at everything for all the work that went in to get us just a couple of stages into the rally. But the car was parked up, and as far as I was concerned, we weren't going any further. But Dara Kelly, my navigator, decided that rather than sit there for 100 and odd cars and to try and get towed out and all that kind of stuff, we'd try and find a way to put the steering arm back together. And we tried to clamp it with a vice grips or something. Didn't really have the tools required to do that. So anyway, he headed off into the yard. There didn't seem to be anyone around. I was hardly even looking, to be honest. I was just right thick at that point. But he ended up coming back with a farmer who we found at the back of the shed, wheeling a welder across the yard, and brought the welder out from the back of the house out to the side of the road. And the farmer, as probably most Donegal people are around the rally, received us very well. He would have done anything he could to help. So he found a 50-metre extension lead, and he ran it from the shed all the way out to the side of the road. And that was pretty handy anyway mechanically, so he had no bother rolling up the sleeves, and he welded the steering arm back together. We rolled up the extension lead and the welder and gave it back to your man, and we strapped in and pulled out about, I don't know, 50 cars later probably by the time we were going, but it just allowed us to drive out to the end of the stage and back to service. So our rally was effectively over, certainly in terms of competitively, but we thought we might get the fuel pressure issue looked at and see if we could maybe rally 2 on Saturday morning. But as it turned out, we couldn't get to the bottom of that, and our rally was over anyway. But it saved us kind of standing on that stage waiting to be rescued for any longer. So you can see in the picture there, that's Dara with the weld mask and all on, doing his work.
Yeah, and look, I mean this in the best possible respect. When you sent me these photos, I just thought, oh my God, that's just brilliant. Like, I mean, your weekend was obviously a disappointment with that happening, but it's also after providing you with a memory that will last a lifetime. I'm sure you probably would have rather finished the rally, right? But that's a story for the ages. Like, side of the road, weld the mask on, off you go. And to be honest with you, Richard, when I heard, there was a bit of welding done, I actually didn't realise it was Dara, because, when you hear the name Moffett, you said, them boys probably know a little bit about engineering anyway. And maybe Richard took the welder out, but Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting.
No, if I had welded it, we'd be in the next ditch again, I'd say. I'm best to stay away from that. But like I said, Dara actually, like we were saying before, he was off the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He works in Germany and he was home, so he spent, I don't know how many hours, two or three late nights anyway, getting the car back together. So he put in a serious shift for us all week, and it all came to nothing really. And he was back in the on the tools before too long. But yeah, like I say, he was able to get us out of there and get us back to service. But to be honest, I didn't think of it. I haven't really thought about it as a memory at all until you mentioned this, or maybe in time. But I was that annoyed and disappointed with the weekend that I had the wherewithal now to take a photo as I stood and watched him do all the work. But that was about the height of it. I hadn't thought of it since, so probably good that I did take the picture just to have the memory when the disappointment passes.
Yeah, I mean, right now it probably feels like a fairly expensive memory, but that might not seem as expensive in 20 years' time when you're still talking about it. You know, it is priceless, really. But I get why maybe it might not seem that way right now, like. But yeah, look, that's the choice of it, I guess. David, I'll come to you, right, because you had a weekend that wasn't without its dramas either, and somehow you managed to bring it home third in Class 14, and what is an extremely competitive and difficult Class 14 in Donegal. It always is. And this did not look likely on Friday.
No, we had a very tough start to the rally too. We had a good enough run on the first stage. As you say, extremely competitive. I don't know what we were. We're somewhere inside the top 10. I think there's over 30 Class 14 cars. Stage 2, and probably an ambitious note. There was a 4 left that tightened, and I should have braked a little bit earlier, and I didn't. And anyway, the back of the car broke away. I had to pull the handbrake not to go in front into the wall. And we got it stopped kind of against the wall. But I guess there wasn't much damage, but we stalled. And the start button, it was just clicking. No start. So Martin actually got out to warn the next car. And anyway, eventually a bit of a crowd got around and pushed us, and we got jump started, and Martin got back in. But we dropped well over a minute, near maybe a minute and 20 seconds. And we were, I think, 40 something in the national at that point. So we were ready to go home too after 2 stages, but everybody said just keep at it, and we did good enough. The rest of Friday went pretty well, set a few good enough times in the mix, and had clawed our way back up to I don't know where by Friday evening, so we were good to go Saturday morning. And then, in fairness, we had a good strong day on Saturday. We really enjoyed it. The conditions were quite mixed, and took a wee while to adapt the brain after the dry Friday to softer tyres and damper conditions. But really enjoyed it now, and seemed to get somewhere near the pace.
Yeah, how challenging, David, was it on Sunday when you had those very, very changed the weather conditions? So like it was monsoon type conditions on top of dry, and okay, right, we had a little bit of rain obviously on Saturday as well, but it appeared that it was drying out pretty quickly, but there was no time to dry out what was coming down Sunday, I'd say.
What was strange about it was on Saturday you had to get used to the road was wet everywhere, basically damp, not floods of water but damp. We went on a wet setup tyre, extra soft. And in fairness, worked really well all day. But on Sunday morning, it was dry and hot, and Richard was out on the stage and he had said, no, it's dry, put on the hard, slick tyres. But we knew there was rain coming at some point, but we didn't expect it as early as it came. So we were on hard slicks, and it rained on Fannet the first time, and then got back into service, and we're debating tyres, and everyone was in the same boat. But we decided to stick because it was so hot that it was drying out very quickly. And we got out to the start of the lane, and we were just sitting, and the heavens opened. And we drove the first as far as the village in torrential rain, wiper on, everything like that. And Glen's very tricky anyway because it's shiny in places, particularly when it's damp. The village itself, as you've probably seen, was a complete mess. But the village for us was actually dry. And when we got out past the village, it was bone dry the whole way to the end. And then we headed over to Atlantic Drive, same thing, did the first half of the stage dry. And by the time we got halfway, it started raining again. So it was very tricky. Luckily, we were up to 4th in the national Saturday evening, and we had about a minute either side of us. so we weren't going to really make an impact in 6 stages. So we were probably backed out a little bit on Sunday. Unfortunately, Kevin Eves hit trouble, so that got us up onto the podium, which was nice. But we weren't really on a push on Sunday. We were on a good push on Saturday, all right, but not really on Sunday.
Yeah, but to make back the bulk of it in a day, basically, is quite pleasing, like, in fairness, and you deserve great credit for that, like.
Yeah, well, look, we obviously made the jump back into the Starlet this year. From the rule change, we were able to, so we managed to talk Sam into selling the car back to us eventually. So we had sort of that done. We got to Kerry and we got to Cavan in the car, but it said a few competitive times in both events we hit trouble. We were jamming first gear in Cavan. I think we were 3rd or 4th in the class at that point. And again, had set some competitive times, but we did a full stage in first gear. So the results really hadn't been shown for us, but we knew that the pace was reasonably good, or close enough to the pace. So we went to Donegal with a bit of ambition, and then of course when you lose a minute, it's hard to. But on Saturday now we really got on it and enjoyed it and got somewhere close. Climbed our way back up. Of course, lots of other people. I mean, it's a tricky event. Not too many, I don't think. Certainly in class 14, got through the event fully clean. I mean, nearly everybody drops time somewhere. There's clips of all sorts of people having moments and spins and whatever. So we knew that as well. And in fairness, we kept our noses clean from the second stage to the end, which wasn't easy. But no, it was nice to get around and well, there's a very small bit of damage, but it's not a major fix.
Mm-hmm. I'll come back to you on the Starlet in a minute, and going back from the Mark II, whatever. But Richard, whenever you went out then, so what are you doing to help this boy here? Or that was the other way. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, I forget this camera's in reverse.
Off whatever we could really. Obviously Friday, by the time we got back into the service there, we're going out for the second loop, and it was bone dry, so it wasn't really a huge amount we could do, but we wouldn't be big ones for doing both our gravel notes really, but kind of at some point in Friday evening, I think we were
about 11 o'clock. I think
about 10 o'clock.
You were still in the pub.
Yeah, about 10 o'clock. He said it was actually thunderstorms outside, and he said, you know what, mud notes could be useful tomorrow. So Martin had the note ready for the copy, and actually went off early Saturday morning on my own.
We had recce'd the previous weekend in bone dry, which always makes it tricky when it turns wet. You can mark what looks like shiny, but you can't really see where the water's lying. So we thought it might be of use. So that's why Richard actually went out on his own. He didn't have anybody else lined up. So he went out on his own and did the notes and drove, which isn't easy, but definitely got some information back to us now about a few tricky things.
Yeah, we'd have a reasonable knowledge, of the lie of the land, at least in most of the stages. So, apart from noting a couple of corners, and generally the terrain in Donegal is very abrasive tar, and you couldn't explain to someone the difference between abrasive tar and shiny tar when it's wet. Generally the grip will remain pretty good on abrasive tar, but you can come around a corner over a crest and there's 20 yards of shiny tar and it's like ice. So was able to sort of note the conditions, but then the conditions if it did rain as well, and get them back to them. So hopefully that was of a help, and it's more about where not to push or where to be careful and where to make time and just not to make a silly mistake. So yeah, that was my role on Saturday morning, and then we sort of floated about to make sure we were able to help if anything was needed, and watched a bit here and there, albeit it was difficult with the crowd. And then on Sunday morning, did the same, ran around the stage last year with Dad, and again made a quick few notes. But like again on Sunday morning, at that point it was completely bone dry, blue skies. You wouldn't have thought that you were preparing for rain, but still marked the shiny spots and whatever. And then obviously as the rain came in, that probably became a bit more relevant. But we stayed in Downings for the day, and we were getting calls and texts back from Letterkenny, what's happening right there, and Sam and Josh and David and all asking me. So I was under a bit of pressure to try and predict the weather, but all we could do is give the sort of current conditions and then looking at phones and forecasts. But as David said, the way that it ended up, there was no right tyre choice. It was such a mixed bag. So it was really quite often, and by Sunday, certainly in my experience, it's very rare. Obviously, Josh and Callum started the day in a battle, but it's rare enough that you have a very close battle still going on Sunday. Generally, the positions start to become spread out a bit, so it's a bit more about just maintaining where you are. I think it was a lot easier for David to be in that position, because if you're in that position and forced to push to hold on to a place or try and catch someone, I mean, you're just so close to the edge when it's as wet as that. So I don't know how much use our weather reports were, but he was thankfully able to get around and make the weekend worthwhile, at least for the camp.
Yeah, good stuff. Lots of gravel on the roads Friday as well, actually, noticed. And
we had gravel roads on Friday. You just have to drive through it and around it.
Yeah, because I noticed we drove it Thursday, and a funny one for you here actually. So between location, I think it's location 3 and maybe 7 on stage 2 and 5. We went on a road which we thought was a stage, running parallel to the stage. There was 3 different gates with the strand of red and white tape on them. You think forbidden ground or whatever. It's like, oh, there's a nice little jump. It wasn't a fucking stage at all, right? And it gets better. Road closed sign. Road closed for the local authorities to tar it. So we were like, Jesus. And then mad scamper, of course, we ended up getting a shite enough spot. But I did notice that on 2 and 5 in particular. I thought there was quite a lot of loose stones out on it and stuff,
Friday was incredibly tricky. I think it added to the challenge of it, to have something different. And there were, like Carnhill, Garrygort, Knockalla, all incredible stages, but pretty much all nice, smooth, fast tar. Like Friday was an awful lot of narrow bumps, grass in the middle of the road. It was just a totally different challenge, which I think adds to it, but maybe not everybody thinks that. And also the fact that it was level playing field for everybody. Is always nice to do, I think.
Yeah, and Richard, I suppose the flip side of that, the actual road mileage then, was there much kind of is the overwhelming majority that it was good to take it out a little Kearney and go down there, or did anyone really have maybe issues with the road miles that it took to go down there?
I don't think so. Certainly not on our end. I mean, we're very well looked after in terms of traffic management and all of that. So I know it was a nightmare for spectators at times, and I know even our service crew coming back to Letterkenny in the evening, where I think it took them 3 hours to do a sort of a 60 kilometer journey. But from our point of view, it's obviously a bit of a drive down there in the morning, but well worth it as far as I'm concerned. I've done Friday stages up in Malin as well, and that was a long trek, but I think it's good for the change. I mean, it's a massive county with great roads all the way up and down it. So it would be my view that the more new stages they use, the better, and mix it up. I mean, I love the classics like everyone else, but I think a couple of classics a day over the weekend would be more than enough. And there's so many good roads in all different parts of the county that could be used. So I would certainly be in favour of. You go to, like, we wouldn't do a huge amount of international rallies, but like road sections are massive, or certainly would have been in like the circuit or the Ulster, and then if you go to Europe and world rallies, I mean, they think nothing of driving 50 kilometres, could be 300 kilometres. So no issue at all from our part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, David, let's go back to the Mark II and Starlet situation. So I'd imagine the box of Kleenex tissues was out whenever the car went over to Sam for that little period of time. Did it? That can't have been easy. But am I right in saying maybe you felt like your hand was possibly forced slightly, like just with the rule at the time or whatever?
Yeah, well, we'd been in class 13 for 2015 to the end of 2019. And we were reasonably on the pace, but sure, everybody wants to make the step up eventually. Obviously, at the time, it wasn't an option. We had the car Richard was using, but he wasn't going to hand it over too easy. We had talked to a chair in it a bit, but so that doesn't really work either, because a lot of the events that we want to do are the same ones. And the opportunity came up to move the car on. It was actually, the car was sold through Kearney, so it was a trade at the time. We didn't know where it was going. And the Escort that we got was actually built by Mark Smith, who prepped the car, so we knew the car before we got it.
Right.
And there was nothing wrong with the car. We took some time to develop it to be sort of modern 2.5 spec, and get it up to some sort of speed. We were getting more comfortable all the time. Mark that preps the car would say that, like, we did Midlands at the start of the year in it, and we were probably the closest to the class 14 pace that we'd been in. I think we did 13 rallies in it. So we were starting to get used to it, but it never drove like I was used to. I was having to adapt the way I was driving it, I suppose. And then there was a few others started to appear with 2.5 engines, and the announcement of the rule change was made. So we sort of had looked at maybe building another car or doing something along those lines. The rules at the moment are a bit grey around the building. And then Sam had obviously decided to go back to the Tarmac Championship this year, so he sort of had mentioned that he maybe wasn't going to use the car. So we managed to do a deal to get it back, and worked out quite well. Quite quickly, we sold the Escort without the engine, and we managed to hold on to the engine, put it in, but it was a lot of mess and a lot of moving around. And immediately we got into it and went to Kerry. It was only finished on they only got the engine in and running on the Thursday. I think I didn't drive it at all. We went to Kerry, and like on the first stage, it just felt like putting on an old shoe.
Yeah.
It was funny. It just works differently. I don't know what the difference is. People ask me all the time, is it a better car? I can't say that for sure. I certainly drive it differently. I can throw it into things and do things with it that when I tried them in the Escort never worked, in terms of junctions and all that stuff. It seems to be, even from watching in cars and stuff, Escorts are driven differently. But I suppose I'm 15 years driving a Starlet. Never drove anything else. So, while they've been developed and the power has come along and the suspension and everything else from what we first would have driven, it's still the same chassis and the same length and the same weight balance and all of that. So, it definitely feels nice to be back in it.
Yeah, just feels more natural, I suppose. That's probably the big thing. So just to get this right, so you didn't sell the car directly to Sam. It went through a trade and then got to Sam.
We traded the car to Kieran Graffin.
That's mad, because I thought it went directly to Sam, and I was like, Jesus, he must have had a buyback option in the clause here or something.
It went to Kieran Graffin because he had the Escort that we sort of knew of and wanted.
Yeah.
And in fairness, he advertised and it didn't sit long. And that was just Sam had decided to take a bit of a step back. He'd obviously was it 17 or 18? He'd done all the championships, and he'd been doing the Tarmac Championship and the National for a long time. And between work and everything else, he just wanted to do a bit more relaxed rallying. And he had asked me, and I said, "Yeah, you'll have good fun in that." For relative to what they were doing for small money, I suppose.
Yeah.
And he used it for, I think he did 6 or 7 rallies, did West Cork, and he did a couple of others in it. And he seemed to enjoy it, and he went pretty well for a man who never drove a really good car. But then when he decided to go back to the R5 thing, the Starlet wasn't really going to be used. I wouldn't say, based on what he said, I don't think you might see him some other day in a modified car again. Like, he certainly liked it. But he said this year or for the next year or two, I'll not be using it. So, yeah, I'd sell it when we asked him. So, there was a deal struck eventually.
Richard, I've used this phrase before, but I'm of the belief that a lot of those guys up there in the top R5s are modified men going through a midlife crisis. I don't know, is that something you'd agree with?
Oh, well, I think the truth is we'd all be in an R5 if we could, the lotto numbers come up, to be honest. Gary's obviously made the step there. I think Kevin, you're just talking to, he'd tell anyone that if you could get the two brothers to give it up, he might have an R5 as well, and plenty of others. Class 14 is unbelievable. The level the cars have got to now, and depending on stage characteristics, we can get even fairly close to R5s. But undoubtedly, if you had the choice, if I won the lotto tomorrow, I'd have a new Polo on the street and the Starlet ideally. But no, it's really just not an option, especially when they're running 2 cars in the house. And it's not just. Even if you could come up with the money to buy one, your work only starts there really in terms of running them and so on. So definitely something that maybe like to sample someday, but not something that would be on the agenda for us at all. But look at where there's plenty of people who'd love to be in a class 14 car, looking up at that as well. So we can't complain. We're pretty lucky to be able to do what we do.
I had this thought actually over the weekend, whereby I'd love to see some sort of a charity event. Obviously, there'd be a lot of red tape and we have to have a lot of agreements here, right? But some sort of a charity event where you get maybe, we'll say, the top 10 class 14 guys to go into the top 10 R5 boys cars and vice versa, just for one event. And it'd be great to just see, right? Obviously, it's not too simple when you see the digits involved and all that stuff, but it'd be just so cool. I'd love to see it.
I don't know, some of the R5 men that come up the front wheel drive route, I think, would really get their eyes open getting into a class 14 car. They're quite a machine, and if you look in class 14, so many have come through class 11, class 13 into class 14. They're not really a car. Now, Josh, in fairness, got into Richard's car, but Josh has done a lot of sliding about over his years in all sorts of cars. But a lot of the R5 drivers came up through front wheel drive and into homologated cars, obviously. But it would be an interesting experiment for sure, but they're certainly not an easy car to keep control of.
For sure. Richard, can I ask, I was just thinking about this yesterday. Josh, obviously, very unlucky. Is that, as far as I can remember, the first off that he's maybe had since the big one in Monaghan 17? I don't remember him having too many excursions over the past 6 years. He's been so consistent.
Yeah, he's been unbelievably consistent. He told me today that he's never crashed the Hyundai before, so I don't know when he started with it, but it's definitely 2 full seasons and maybe a little bit more.
He definitely had the Hyundai for 19 in Donegal anyway, because that was a big talking point before, I think.
That was the blue car. I don't know if that was that same car or a hired car, but
it might have been a different one actually. Yeah, he had the blue. It was blue.
He hired them all before he bought that. He hired
20. I'd say 20. Whatever bit of COVID rallying there was in 20, and then on from there. And he's obviously been driving that thing on the door handles for 2-3 seasons every rally. He maybe had a couple of nationals last year where he was comfortable enough, but obviously if Callum or Ali or Sam or any of the top guys are out, he's sort of a 10/10, and he's just got so comfortable. It's older technology, but has obviously got so comfortable in the way he drives it. He's obviously throwing it about and happy with all 4 wheels sort of moving across the road. So on the law of averages, it's going to happen at some point. Obviously Callum had him under a lot of pressure, and if you drive a car that hard for that long, and the cuts they're taking and the chances that they're taking, eventually something's got to give. So unfortunately that's when it had to happen, but probably had to happen at some point.
Yeah. David, would you agree with the statement that I would have made previously, in the sense that I believe Josh is the best man to minimise a mistake and lose the minimal amount of time when making a mistake? Obviously yesterday I disregarded that, right? That's a different story. But if he has a spin or something, he just seems to be back and there's minimal time loss. It's crazy.
It's his car control, really.
Yeah.
We obviously would have known them growing up and whatever. Josh would have been driving, and still you'd find him driving he'd buy a car for around the field and he'd be out sliding it around at 206 or something, on a Saturday. He would drive anything he can get his hands on. Quad bikes, go-karts, anything. And that is, I think, where it comes from. He's very natural to sort of throw the car in or pull the handbrake or whatever, where some drivers probably panic. Actually, just before the Donegal this year, we were talking the square left at the end of Carn Hill around the house. He overshot it last year at big speed, and it's kind of on a corner, but he lost literally 3 or 4 seconds down the escape and away, back up. It didn't hardly lost any time, as you say. But it's just car control. He just seems to be very comfortable.
Yeah. Sam, yes, Richard, I was interested in his reaction after the stage where Josh is unlucky. I think he was a bit annoyed. I think the stream cut off with Killian just at the right time for maybe Sam and Josh's stake. I think he made reference to the board or something like that. But he was seemed quite wound up at the time.
I didn't actually see it with coverage and going about. I didn't actually see what he said to Killian.
Yeah. No, something along the lines of the board. Look, I don't want to go too much into it either. I don't want to be getting anyone in trouble or whatever. But lads are trying to find out maybe what has happened, and the first thing is the fuck. I won't repeat it, but I was thinking, Jesus, it's like maybe an argument you two boys would have at home or whatever. One of those things, which obviously quite common or whatever. Listen, there's a couple of other things I want to talk about just before I let you go. You've been very, very good with your time, right? But the family and the enterprising element of it. Richard, the parking solutions, give us a shout for that there and tell us what it's all about.
So what we're doing now, we make car storage solutions, I suppose, in simple terms. So essentially car storage lifts, loft access lifts, car stackers, basement access, turntables, anything essentially for optimizing access or storage for vehicles where space is at a premium. So we've been doing that for 2 or 3 years now, and selling into doing a lot of custom and bespoke stuff where people have a sort of a already existing garage or scenario whereby something kind of standard off the shelf isn't going to fit or isn't going to solve their problem, and we sort of start from scratch and come up with a solution to make their life easier, like I say, in terms of access, in terms of storage. So doing a lot of private stuff, sort of private car owners and multiple car owners who, rather than maybe paying a storage facility to keep their car, keeping it off site somewhere, have height but don't have enough ground space, and we can sort of optimize that and help them store their vehicle sort of on site at home or wherever it might be. So that's what keeps us busy at the minute.
Good stuff. I see the M-Spares top on you there, Davey.
Yeah, didn't get changed from work yet.
Yeah, busy away.
We're busy. Yeah, we are. Well, obviously, Dad's the original business is the engineer business in our house. Obviously, there's a few others as well. But the family connection to the truck mounted forklift to the Moffett Mounties, they're still built in Dundalk, but our family it was my auntie and uncle, Sam Josh's father, that would have been in it, and my father always stayed in the general engineering business. But in 2015 we still built them in Dundalk, but they moved the spare parts away, and the phone started to ring here in Dad's business looking for parts because nobody could get them. It was all online. And anyway, I moved back in 2015 and started doing spare parts for the forklifts, and very quickly it grew into sort of buying, selling machines and repairs, and we do a bit of everything now. So that's what we're at, and 8 years on I'm still here, still doing it, so it's not so bad.
Good stuff. No, it's unbelievable enterprise, and like Sam doing so well with the Moffett automated storage. We know the success of CombiLift. I think you probably have to have a bit of a head for it too, Richard. And the big thing I have admiration for with the like of what maybe your family have is the tolerance of stress levels, because we're talking big companies, we're talking high energy, and we're talking a lot of people maybe involved in them. So how do you reckon you all go about managing that?
I don't know that. I don't know if we do that well, to be honest, but
go rallying, I suppose.
Well, there definitely has to probably be a release at some point, but we'll generally be back in work on Monday morning, unfortunately. But I guess it's what we've sort of always seen and always known in terms of work ethic. And look, what you do what you can. Not every day is fun or enjoyable necessarily, but you just sort of have to go through and deal with whatever problems you can and try and come up with a better way of doing something the next time and not make the same mistake again, I suppose. And there's no secret sauce, I don't think, but I don't think there's anything that's more than that to it. But I suppose, like I say, we've certainly our generation, if it's what we've seen before us, and try to keep that moving forward, I suppose, as best we can.
I hadn't had that, David.
No, not really. I get up and go to work on a Monday, unfortunately. It would have been nice to stay in Donegal last night, but we came down the road back to work this morning, so it has to be done.
Yeah, it's one of those things, as I said before, that reality is every bit as bad as the fear the night before, isn't it? Especially after something like Donegal. Lads, very quickly before we stop, where and what is next for the two of you then? What's happening?
Very little for me. I was very lucky to get to Donegal. My wife's expecting now in July, so that'll be for me. Number 3 in the middle of July, so that'll be. I might do no rallying for a while. So it's nice to finish on a high.
yeah, for sure. Richie, best luck, by the way.
Yeah, well, well, if we can get the car back sorted in the next couple of weeks, Dad's going to take it to Loughgall. There's a little a rally on there, and they're actually having a open road stage this year as well, so it's a bit more than just the sort of park event. And I'm not sure why, but I put my hand up to sit in the navigator seat for that event, so that's where I'm going next. Never ever done it before, don't expect to be any good at it, but he said it'd be a bit of crack, so I said I'll go and maybe I can be familiar enough with the car, so maybe give a few pointers. So that's the plan in a few weeks, if we can get the car back and running smooth. And then I think I'm going to go and do that the Down Rally in July. It's got some really good stages, and it just sort of suits a couple of the national rounds I'm away for, and they didn't fall well. So to be honest, look, like pretty much everyone else, we sort of plan the year around Donegal and trying to get to it in as best place possible. So the air goes out of it a wee bit after that, and just pick and choose a couple for the rest of the year, whatever happens. But the next couple of rounds, the national don't really suit me, and if we can get the car back going, I'll go and do a couple more, but it'll be nothing serious.
Great to see the old boy back. He really enjoyed Bolton last year by the look of things there. So look, best of luck to all.
Over the development in the car from me last had driven it, and like it wasn't that much, but he just the paddle change and the grip and the brakes and everything has improved a little bit. And he'd driven it in West Cork. I don't know what year that was, 17 maybe. But we since have done sort of an upgrade on the car, and he just couldn't get over it. So he's keen to go again. Hopefully he'll enjoy it.
Yeah, to see the joy that it brings, it's unbelievable, you know. And especially I suppose in many respects, lads, you've been very good with your time. Really appreciate it. Dave, well done again the weekend. Richard, a story for the ages. Thanks for coming on the Irish Rally podcast and telling us all about it. All right, lads.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks very much.
Fascinating insight there from David and Richard Moffett indeed. Time now to go through our class winners from the Wilton Recycling Donegal International Rally. Class 9 going to David Gordon and Brendan McElhenney. Class 10, Eamon McLaughlin and Sean Doherty. 11F going to Kevin McLaughlin and Aidan Gallagher. 11R going to Anthony Hand and Peter Deary. Class 12, Sean Moynihan and Pádraig O'Donovan, a man who's been in fantastic form this year. Sean Moynihan, fantastic drive on the Rally of the Lakes as well. Class 13, that went to Johnny Gordon with Gary McNern, 28 overall there as well. Class 14 went to, of course, Kevin Gallagher with Ryan Moore alongside. 2 minutes and 19 seconds they had over Damien Torish with David Moffett, our guest from earlier, and Martin Connolly finishing third in class there. Moving back down then to Class 15, Jim McDowell and Shona Hale. Class 20, Trevor Bustard and John McCafferty. Class 22 going to Jason Mooney and Eamon Bonner. Class 24, Ryan Loughran and Garrett Doherty, 6th overall as well. The RC2 class, obviously, we must say, a very well done indeed. Callum Devine and Noel O'Sullivan. We could see the emotion in Callum Devine when he got to the end of Fanad. The interviews with Oisin Kelly and with Andy Walsh were just stuff of absolute raw emotion, and obviously stuff of dreams for Callum. So well done to him, and a great result after the disappointment of last year. Great hustle, of course, with Josh Moffett. Fantastic indeed, it must be said. Matt Edwards, what a drive that was. Had difficulties with problems on the first day and managed to get back into second, just 55 seconds off Callum Devine. So well done to Matt Edwards and Dave Moynihan. Third, Sam Moffett and Keith Moriarty. Marion Evans then after that, and Robert Barrable. So let's go on to the RC3. That went to Brendan Comiskey. RC4, our guest from earlier, Dylan Eves and Ryan Farrell. Historics, Class 17, Johnny McDade and Ben Thompson. Class 18, Michael McDade and Declan Casey. Well done to Michael McDade and Declan Casey, who took the historics there. And I know that would mean an awful lot to those two indeed. Declan, very, very prominent on social media and a big advocate for historic rallying. So no doubt they enjoyed the celebrations as well. Marty McCormack and Barney Mitchell, Class 19. Fantastic to see that M3 coming up in Knockalla in particular, first time round. It was just a throwback to a bygone era. Fantastic stuff. Class 16, of course, juniors, Jack McKenna and Damien Doherty. Very, very tight here in this one. Just a second to spare over Gary Cassidy and Gary McCrudden, with Ben McIntyre and Andrew Wedlock in third. That is the story in terms of our class winners from Donegal. Well done as well to Josh McElrain and James Fulton on their exploits last weekend. A reminder to anyone that marshalled in Donegal last weekend to share our posts regarding the two experiences in association with Rally Connection that we have to give away. And don't forget to comment your name under that exact post as well. We'll be checking to make sure that you did actually marshal. And well done to all the volunteers who were out at the weekend. So 2 of those experiences to give away. Another little bit of time to enter, and in the next couple of days we will announce the 2 winners. Best luck to everyone involved, of course, in the Moonraker this Sunday. Preparations also in full swing for the Ravens Rock Rally in a couple of weeks' time on the 2nd of July. And we, of course, will be back again soon with the very best of content. If anyone would like to come on board to keep the show on the road until the end of the year, please email irishrallypodcast@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form on irishrallypod.com or send us a DM. And of course, a massive thank you to PFD Travel, SES Productions, Tech and Tools, and Rally Connection. That's where we leave it, folks. Chat to you again soon. The Irish Rally Podcast is brought to you in association with Tech and Tools, PFT Travel, SVS